Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me thank you for being here. The stories on this podcast are meant to let you know that you're not alone in what you're going through, and that we can all find strength in struggle with the right perspective. If you've been enjoying the podcast, let me ask that you leave a review on your platform of choice to help us grow so that we can continue to make the world a better place, one conversation at a time. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 91. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and we have a very, very, very special guest down in Texas, Gabe Fuentes. Gabe, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm doing really, really well. Super excited to do this podcast and chit chat a little bit with you and your listeners and share my story. I'm ready, dude.
I am so excited for this conversation. Like I was telling you before we hit record, I know bits and pieces of your story through social media, but I also know there's a lot underneath the surface, and I'm just grateful for this opportunity to unpack it with you. Before we get to any of that, why don't you just introduce yourself to people who might not know who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Gabe Fuentes. I work for BPN in the operations department. So been there for about 2 years and been able to connect with you, Joe, just through different events or different, social media type stuff. And yeah, that's kind of my spiel. I'm from Austin originally. I come from a military background. Um, yeah, love of health and fitness, and yeah.
So, what was the path for you that led you to BPN? Or, in other words, what was your life like before BPN?
Yeah, spent 6 years in the Coast Guard. Lived in Florida and Virginia, and primarily up in like New Hampshire, Maine area. Drove boats to the Coast Guard, so a lot of like search and rescue type stuff. And so through that, I've always, you know, I grew up with brothers who were very athletic, so I've always kind of been around like fitness and stuff like that. And obviously in the military, on your downtime, it's a lot of sports or just like working out with the guys. So I've always kind of had a love for fitness through that. I found BPN. First off, I love everyone's BPN story about how they found the brand. I think it's so cool and like unique. But I found BPN literally just scrolling through YouTube, and it was when Nick was doing his very first Ironman, and I was like, who is this guy? Just another YouTuber. And I realized he had a supplement company, and I ended up buying some free cereal protein powder. And I was like, this stuff's delicious. And but the cool thing is I realized that they're out of Round Rock, Texas. I'm from Cedar Park, Texas, which is like 15 minutes away. And so I instantly just like fell in love with the company. I was like, just what they were doing. And I obviously was like, it'd be so cool to get a job there. So um yeah, so I got out of the Coast Guard a year or so later and moved back home and worked some odd jobs here or there. And VPN had put a posting out for, they were looking for some fulfillment help. And I mean, nothing lot, not a lot to it, man, but sent the resume in and was super excited to get a job offer. And that's about it, man. Nothing too crazy.
Yeah, you're a humble guy, which I like. But I do want to go even further back in time, just before you got
Yeah.
to the Coast Guard, and then we'll jump back to present day. But what led you to the Coast Guard in the first place?
Yeah. So uh, I know for me, I mean, I grew up in a very big family. I'm the youngest of six. Three of us are adopted. So I have an incredible family. And something my parents have always instilled in me is just the importance of serving others. And I think school is never like my favorite or hottest topic. And so I knew I don't know. I was really trapped in the military, and just like I thought the structure would be really good. I knew the being able to travel, and but the biggest thing for me, like I wanted to do something where I actually felt like I would make a difference. And so talking to my cousin who's in the Coast Guard, kind of taught me a little about what they did, and definitely when talked to a recruiter and just kind of realized like, oh, like they they do care about their members. I'm not another number on the page. I'll actually be doing like the mission. Um, and I had a couple setbacks. I struggled with like the ASVAB, their test. I took that, I think 3 times or so. I also, out of high school, I tore my ACL um, playing soccer, and not a soccer guy, just playing with friends, just making that clear. I was playing with friends, I tore my ACL, and that kind of set me back about 2 years, just like rehab and kind of get, back to where I needed to be. But in the meantime, I had, gotten recruited through the Coast Guard. So, um, yeah.
Got it. So from there, we'll come back to present day. You're working at BPN. You just ran what I assume is your first ultra marathon. Is that right?
Dude, my first ultra marathon.
Had you had you run a marathon distance before that?
Dude, I ran a marathon uh 3 weeks prior as a training run.
So you went all in.
I went all in, man. Yeah. So, um, yeah, it was crazy. That was a crazy race.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the ultra in a little bit. And
Sure.
we might as well dive into the deep stuff. So I'll ask you the first question, which is a simple one, but a powerful one. What is the hardest thing in life that you've ever had to handle that you didn't get to choose for yourself?
Um, yeah, I mean, for me, it was funny. I had a brain tumor, and going through that entire process, um, that that changed me forever. And there's so many aspects of that whole, from finding out about it to the surgery to recovering to the journey of getting back to running. Like that entire process, the hardest I've ever had to deal with. That was completely out of my control. I had no say in that, but it taught me a lot, and I'm super grateful for it.
So can we go back to the day that you found out you had the brain tumor, or even further back if you had a feeling something was off before that?
Yeah. So to kind of go a few steps back, so um, when Nick had ran Leadville, I was super inspired by that, and I remember watching hit the film. The media team did just like such an incredible job on, and just being so overwhelmed of just like just honored that not only going to work at BPM, but I get to know Nick, and I've seen the hours of dedication put into that. But it made me like want to really go push myself. And so I had gone and did this race called Zion at Night. It was a half marathon in Zion National Park. It's like such an amazing thing to do. Well, kind of leading up to that race, I noticed that I was having these like kind of vision issues. So like I would have these like moments where I couldn't, like depth perception loss. Where I was like, I'm not really sure how far, but they're like 30-second to a minute long episodes, but they were like so rare and so like minuscule. I was like, whatever. I'm a very, very, very stubborn person. And so I was like, man, I'm just like dehydrated. Like my ears are like not thinking anything serious. So I came back after that race, like very high on life. And Nick at that time was now training for the Rocky Raccoon 100 miler. And some other people at work were going to do the 100K. And so I made a decision, hey, like I want to push my limits. I want to see, how far I can take my body. And so I signed up for the Rocky Raccoon 100K, 62 miles or whatever. And so, man, I started running like crazy, and honestly was like the healthiest I have ever felt and been. Um, but this depth perception loss kept getting worse and more aggressive to the point where like I've always been able to like figure it out and be like, oh, I can kind of. But man, like I'd be driving, I'm like, I have no idea where that car is in front of me, and that was kind of like my, hey, you really need to figure this out. And so I went to my family doctor. He sent me to a neuro doctor. He goes, I think you just need glasses, but we'll do an MRI just for fun. I was like, all right, sounds good. I go to the eye doctor. Yeah, your eyes are great. We'll go to an ENT now. I mean, I'm like, whatever. Um, Meanwhile, I'm still running like a crap ton. I'm running all the time in the trails and just loving being out in nature. So about a month goes by and I still haven't heard anything from the doctor about the MRI. And I'm like, whatever, like he said it's good. The race, Rocky Raccoon race is February 4th of 2022. February 2nd, I get a call at 4 o'clock. I'm about to get off work. And it's a nurse and she goes, hey, like, is this Gabe? And I said, yeah, like, what's going on? She's like, hi, like, do you mind like having a seat for a second? And I was like, what? She was, can you sit down? And I was like, yeah, I'm sitting down. I was like leaning up against like a shelf. I'm like, what's up? It's 4 o'clock. You know, I'm trying to go home. It's 4 o'clock. And she goes, hey, like, I just want to let you know, like, your results came back and we found a 2.5 centimeter mass on your brain. And dude, that is a moment in my life I'll never forget that moment of instant just like shock. I've never felt shock like that in my life. And the problem also is like they can't tell you like they're like, you know, call your oncologist. And they're like, what does this mean? You know? And so I I left the warehouse and I walked outside and like perfect coincidence, Nick is like by himself walking across and I said, hey man, can I talk to you? We stepped aside and I told him and I'll never forget he told me, he said, first off, he was like, you know, we're here for you. Like, we're going to absolutely support you through this. Like, myself and the team, like, we love you. And, like, whatever you need, like, we're going to get through this together. But he also said, don't overthink anything and don't Google anything. And I don't know why it's like ingrained in my head. I didn't Google anything, but I overthought everything. And, man, I just remember driving home and talking to my mom and being so angry. I was like punching my steering wheel. I was screaming. Like I was an absolute, I really shouldn't have driven home, but I was an absolute wreck. And I get home, I basically call another doctor, another neuro doctor, and he goes, yeah, like you can't do your race. Like, we don't know what it is. Like, and that was a really difficult part for me because in my mind, like I'm healthy, I'm feeling great, I'm ready to do this race, and now you're like, well, now you can't because something's in your head. So they told me to go meet with get an MRI done with contrast on Monday. So I spent the whole entire weekend trying to figure out what was going on. Monday came, did the MRI with contrast. I was supposed to meet with a neuro surgeon and oncology that following week, but because of a stupid snowstorm we have in Texas, which wasn't that bad at all, they pushed all the appointments ahead. So my appointment with the neurosurgeon went from a week out to a month out. Oncology wouldn't tell me anything until I met with the neurosurgeon. So I went from like, thought I was gonna have answers soon, then I gotta wait a month wondering like if it's benign or not, you know, are y'all going in there or not? And I was a wreck. I was an absolute wreck. And there's many times I would be at work and I would go and I would sit on the toilet, sit on the bathroom floor, like bawl my eyes out, clean up, go back to work, pack my orders, take a break, go back. Like, dude, and it was like 3, 4 times a day I was doing this. I was just in the craziest, most depressed place I feel like I've ever been. Um, so I finally meet with the neurosurgeon. He goes, like, yeah, like we gotta go in there. And essentially what was happening is where the tumor was pushing on my visual area. And whenever my brain would get stimulated, it was causing me to have seizures in my eyes. And so that's what those episodes were. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, that was not anything what I was expecting. Um, so yeah, dude, so we made a plan. March 31st was, when we were gonna have surgery. So we kind of just waited, and March 31st rolled around. We went in that morning, and I mean, I just remember being just really kind of disoriented, not really sure like what was going on, very much of a blur. I do remember though getting like they put all kinds of needles and stuff in you, and the very first IV, the nurse missed like the vein, and they have this policy. Dude, I'm already like thinking like I'm on my deathbed, but their policy is if you miss, another nurse would come and like try again. And so when she's like, "Oh, sorry, I missed," I was like, "Lady, this is not how I want to start this morning. Like, please, God, don't let this nurse near my body. Like, get this lady out of here." But no, man. So they came in, gave me anesthesia, knocked me out, and I woke up. And I remember just being like so excited because they were done. Um, One of the hardest things I think for me, when someone tells you that like the one thing that makes you you is your brain. The one thing that makes you, you know, have feelings and emotions and, think things, process everything is tampered with, and you got to rely on someone else's hands to like go do this work. Like you, you check a lot of things in your life. I've never researched a doctor more in my life. I've never read like, dude, it'd be like 4.9 star review. I'm like, ooh, like why, why? And it's like slow wait times in the waiting room, and I'm like, okay, like you just go like just the craziest places.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so had the surgery, everything went well. He did tell me that I might have some like vision issues. I didn't realize I was going to lose all depth perception in my right eye completely. So when I came out of surgery, bro, I could not see like my hand like on this side of my. It was crazy. So that, and also everything was so slow. Like talking was slow, eating was slow. I was on a walker for like 2 weeks. Like just like stuff like that where I wasn't necessarily like prepared for. Um, And then, so I leave the hospital. I'm kind of going back and forth with my mom, my sisters. I need like some good care. They put you on these steroids that absolutely wreck you. They help with the swelling. Um, and that was like really difficult for me, because I didn't know how bad it was going to jack me up. I was, gave me like really bad sleep insomnia, really bad, uh, like irritability. It increased my appetite. Dude, I was eating so much food that I was like throwing up while I was sleeping. Like I could not stop eating. And like I was ordering like crumble cookie at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and it would show up and I'd be like, I don't want this. But I'll eat it because so that was like just a crazy experience. Um Yeah. So I left out a big part on leading up to surgery. And it's a night where it's a little difficult to talk about, but I think, like I said, I think it's really important to share. Um, I got in like a really very low place, incredibly depressed. I have an incredible family. And I one of my insecurities is something I've always had a hard time with is the thought of being adopted. I don't know a ton about my background as far as, my biological family. But what I do know isn't great. And so, man, I've always had this really big battle with like associating love with like being unwanted. because in my mind, at times, I know this is a lie, but like at times I start fighting with, well, man, if these people who gave birth to me like didn't want me, then like why would he? And I know it's a lie, but man, it's very easy to believe. And so I remember very clearly there was a night where, to paint the scene, it was the most like classic. It's a Saturday night. It's cold. It's raining. I'd already been drinking, and I was drinking. And I was getting in my head and not in a place where I need to be at. I mean, I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, honestly, I felt like I was a burden on people. I felt like my family, I was adding additional stress to their life. Um, and I was like, cool, like I'm like, let's go. I don't want to be here anymore. I have this binder and it's all my adoption stuff. And I was reading through that, which also you should not be doing if you're already in a bad place. And I stumbled upon this page and it talked about my birth father. He wanted me to be aborted because he already had like 5 kids and couldn't basically afford another one, which was like the absolute cream of the crop for me and icing on the cake. And I was like, cool, that's my answer. Like, I'm not supposed to, this is a mistake. And I literally was like, cool, I'll finish this way through, grab my gun, and we'll call it a day. Um, and I think for me, let's see what's going. I think for me, I what scared me the most about that night was like I wasn't scared. Me being here like didn't phase me. I didn't give I didn't give a crap about who it was hurting. In my mind, like I was the one hurting everyone else. I was the reason that you know people were freaking out. Because going back to the beginning of this, I was never physically hurting, right? So it's like you associate pain with like getting fixed. You go to the doctor. Dude, there's never a moment in this entire process where I was like physically like hurting. I just know everyone was reaching out thinking I was dying, and I was like, I'm not. And so um I talked to my sister that night, not talking a little crazy, but I didn't realize that she had called my older brother and he was driving over and he like knocked at my door at like 2 a.m. Like honestly probably within like 10 minutes. Like, I mean, I was there, man. And he came in and we talked for a long time and we cried together for a very long time and exchanged a lot of words and just kind of reiterate he loved me and he's starting having to deal with this. And um so yeah, that was kind of a real pinnacle night of this entire brain stuff that I will never ever forget. And um looking back on it, like I'm so blessed for my family and my friends and everyone who supported me through that, because like you need people like that, and I know you preach it all the time, like, and we preach that BPM, like community, you know, community, community is so much more important than I think anyone could ever describe. It's awesome to have friends. It's great to have a family, but have people who are going to be there not only during good times, but like I don't really care about the good times. I want people there during my bad times, because bad times are a guarantee in your life. It's gonna happen. Today may have been a good day. Guess what? Tomorrow might be a crappy day, and you're gonna need those people who are gonna stick with you side by side, and vice versa. Like they're gonna be there for you, and you're gonna be there for them. That's what a community. That's what a good friendship is for me. You know what I mean? Like there's always good to be happy, but man, sometimes people have more bad than good, and we got to support them through that. So yeah, that's that's the brain stuff.
Man, I just appreciate you sharing that. I'm really happy you're here to share that. And I've got a few questions, but you know, when you were talking about that phone call you got from the nurse and you were leaning up against the wall, she told you to sit down and you got that news. I got the chills and I almost felt like I was a little lightheaded because I was just imagining at that point, like I would guess you felt like you were the only person like everything else disappeared for that second, that minute, whatever. And like that news just shook you to your core.
Yeah.
And then you walk outside. And I've been in those places. And I think if we're being honest, everybody's experienced this at some point in their life where you're just at such a low and you just need another human. It doesn't matter if it's Nick Bear or somebody you've met once in your life. You just need somebody to be there, to hear you, to see you, to just be there. And that's really powerful. And I'm just really grateful that you're willing to talk about all of it because while everybody's not going through what you went through, I think everybody's going through something. And you said at the beginning you're a different person on the other side of this. I think that's easy to believe because you've been through a lot. In what ways would you say you're different on the other side of this?
Yeah. So I mean, dude, the biggest thing for me, man, it's how I approach life. It's the things that I look at my life and the things I have and the relationships I have in such a different perspective now than before any of this. Man, like every, everyone truly lives in these clouds. Like we all live in these clouds of, man, I really, I'll see you tomorrow. Hey, next weekend let's go do this. Hey, let's plan this for, next year. Man, and all those things are fantastic, right? Because when you plan things, it gives you the motivation to get things done. But for me, like when you're for me, when your life truly is like, I feel like it was tampered with. The thing that makes you you is tampered with. It really brings perspective to what it means to be a human and what it means to live, you know? And I think that's the biggest thing for me is that it really put perspective on how amazing and incredible and beautiful not only this world that we get to live in, this experience, this relationship that we get to build with people, but a true picture of what it means like to be a human. And I think that's what that did for me.
That's really beautiful. I mean, it's been said that you can't have the sweet without the bitter. You can't have the light without the dark, right? That contrast of life, it brings out a lot and it shows us the beautiful things. But sometimes we need to be in those low places in order to appreciate everything else the way that it deserves to be appreciated. I'm curious for you if you look at this and you feel like this is something that was supposed to happen, that needed to happen, that just happened and now you're here on the other side as a different person. How do you reconcile the fact that this did happen to you and you didn't plan for it?
Yeah, I don't know if it was something that needed to happen or looking someone asked me the other day, they said like, do you wish you had like your do you wish you were like you felt the same before surgery or like now? And there's definitely different aspects. Physically, I wish it was before surgery. Cause I have like permanent eye damage like for the rest of my life, which isn't changing. So, like that's the annoying thing because I know what it was like before. But dude, like mentally, bro, I wouldn't give it for the world. I would do this once a year if I gotta feel like I know it's a little out there, but like seriously, like what it's been able to do for me as far as like rekindling relationships, like ending relationships, but like giving a whole new perspective on life. Like there's nothing that beats that. I think everyone goes through life, and I think a lot of people have these aha moments, and everyone's aha moment is going to be different. You know what I mean? It may be someone dumping them. It may be, a brain surgery. It may be getting, a bad report card. Like, I don't know what it's going to be, but everyone, because we're all different, right? But like everyone's going to have that aha moment. And it's what you do with that aha moment, which is really going to make a difference, not only your life, but others. And for me, like, it was the surgery.
So I've got two quotes I want to share. One I've shared many times on the podcast, but I think it's worth sharing again. And one is a new one. So the old one from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she said, "The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen."
That's really spot on. You know, I, I I keep going back to this concept of like you're not going to get to the good unless you go through the bad. Um, and I think like y- we live in such a world that's so right, so social media driven, it's so image based. And I think so much of what we see, I mean, not that it's, I mean, I think a lot of it is fake, but like so much of what we see is not what is really happening. And there are so many people who are hurting and they're going through hard times. And it makes me think, man, if we can be positive and we can be a light, knowing that we've had our own struggles and we know that they're going through hard times. And I think like that's why like it sucks to talk about like that night where I was about to call it, but I think it's so important because I know people are struggling. I know people struggle with being adopted. I know people struggle with suicide. Like I know people have those thoughts because I have those thoughts, and we're all the people. We're all the same. We all put our pants on the same way every morning. Like honestly, So no, I love that quote, but I think to get to something beautiful, you have to go through the trials and tribulations.
Yeah, and I would also say that on the other side of those trials and tribulations, we become beautiful people, and also through them, we have the opportunity to be beautiful people and to shine really bright. And this wasn't the second quote I was going to share, but it feels right. This is also from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she said, "People are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out, but when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there's a light from within." And I feel like sometimes when we're going through those hard times, those dark seasons that we didn't ask for, we have to be able to step back and look at it and say, hey, people are watching me right now. And this is an incredible platform, an amazing opportunity to let the light I have within me shine because it means even more during this dark season.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Uh, and the original quote I was going to share, just to throw this in here, was from Haruki Murakami, who said, "Despite your best efforts, people are going to be hurt when it's time for them to be hurt." Essentially, you can't avoid the painful parts of life. They're going to happen, and we have to accept that sometimes it's not within our control.
Absolutely. It's not our control, but I think as long as you're doing your part to be supportive and letting people know that you care about them and you can be that light at the end of the day. Like I think that's all of our jobs. That's everyone's job. You know.
I agree. So, Gabe, that was a season of life that you did not choose. We're going to flip the
Oh,
script here for a sec. What is the hardest thing that you've done on purpose that you've chosen for yourself, and why did you choose to do that thing?
yeah. My Antelope 50 miler ultra marathon that I did 2 weeks ago. Um, that was that was one of the most difficult physical things I've done. But it's also very, very difficult mentally and not in the way that I was expecting. And I'll dive in that here in a second. But I definitely ran that race because I'm a very, very firm believer in if you really want to make a difference in people's lives and you really want to encourage people, like you got to build a track record. No one's going to listen to anyone who doesn't have a track record. Why would you? I wouldn't want to. And so something that I've always tried to do is just do what I say I'm going to do. You know, things are going to happen. a brain surgery. Like think, you break like things will happen and you'll have hiccups along the road, but that doesn't mean you don't go finish the race. And so for me, like, I said that I wanted to run an ultra. And so when I signed up for that ultra, like I couldn't even run a mile when I ran that ultra when I signed up for the race. I was banking on me figuring out my eyesight stuff. Um, but I knew, you know, VPN's slogan for this year is prove yourself right. And I mean, proving myself right was doing what I said I was going to do. And that's as simple it is. If I said I'm going to do something, like we're going to do it, you know? And so, this race kind of crossed my screen. Our dear friend Casey Klein had signed up for it. She posted on Instagram, and 10 other people signed up. And I was like, man, this is what I'm doing. This is the race that we're going to do. And it took a while to kind of get back to the point of walking a decent amount of miles and getting to where I felt good physically. Visually, like I was like, man, this clearly ain't going away. So now we just got to adapt and overcome. We'll figure it out. Um, but yeah, that was the race that we decided we were going to do.
And so we'll dive into the race a bit, but I just want to point this out for the record. I can relate so much to the visual side of things. When I run and it's dark outside or I'm on uneven terrain, sidewalks, trails, etc., I trip an absurd amount. And it's not for lack of trying. It's just that depth perception piece. And so it's no joke, man. And it's easy to overlook if you've never experienced it, but I feel you on that.
Yeah, it's and I think for me, it's in one eye, so it like maybe it doesn't sound as like, oh, it's only one. No, it throws everything off because it's one eye because you got the other eye trying to like count. Yeah, you
Yeah.
get it.
So all right. So the race itself, you said it challenged you from a mental standpoint in ways that you didn't expect it to. So
Yeah,
why don't you tell us about the race and tell us about those challenges?
yeah, man. So the race was an Antelope Canyon 50 miler, northern Arizona, along um along Horseshoe Bend and like Lake Powell. Beautiful. I mean, some of the most beautiful scenery I've ever seen. Um, I knew it was gonna be pretty sandy course. I thought it was gonna be somewhat flat, not too much, like a couple thousand feet in elevation. It wasn't gonna be too bad. Weather was looking good. 20% chance of rain in the morning, like really slim. Day before, man, just kind of scout, did a little shakeout run. I was like, man, this is sandy. Like this is gonna be a little different. So that morning, man, I mean, race kicked off at 5:45, and I really wasn't thinking about too much that morning. More just kind of going through my pack. I knew the first aid station where I got to see like my girlfriend and my buddy Drew was at mile 20, so I had to fend for myself for 20 miles. Um, so my buddy Eric works with me, but we took off together and did half a mile in. We round this corner we look up and there's this massive like mountain ahead, and it's dark out and you see like hundreds of little headlamps zigzagging their way up this mountain. And I remember being like, what the heck did I just get myself into? Like, not, all right, man, we got 50 miles, but just like, what am I doing? I mean, like, oh God. Dude, we go up this mountain and we're coming down, and I pulled a classic. I didn't charge my headlamp that night before. So my headlamp dies. Thank goodness the sun's coming up. I'm running behind Eric and his headlamp light. I'm tripping and like whatever. Sun comes up, man. We start running. We're running through this thick sand, heavy on the feet. We're zigzagging, trying to find like the compact sand. Um, and just being like, this is so crazy. This is like nuts, dude. We were running on like a Navajo like Indian reservation, which is just like, I don't know. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And we're running through these canyons, and the scenery out there is just like unbelievable, man. And it's kind of like an out and back for the first like I don't know, 15 or so. Um, So we come up, we come to this mountain, and we're literally hands and knees climbing up this mountain. And my very first step, I kick my right foot like bad, dude, like bad to where like I'm about to cry. Like tears are forming. I'm like, my foot's bleeding. Like it's gone. Like I was like so determined. I just like lost my foot. And we get up this mountain. We keep running in the sand. And I finally come to the first aid station. I see Hannah, I see Drew. And dude, it starts raining, like downpouring. And I'm like, what is happening? It rains the entire rest of the day. It doesn't stop. And it's cold and it's windy. And I'm like, this was not a part of the weather at all. So we leave mile 20 and we start on Horseshoe Bend. Horseshoe Bend is a real famous sort of Colorado River. Does like a really cool like turnaround. And dude, you feel you're like 10,000 feet up. I mean, you're so high up. And to one thing I learned, when you already have some like visual issues and you're trying to look at something so massive, it is like I've never felt so disoriented and dizzy in my entire life. And that was crazy. So we try to run Horseshoe Bend, but it's really rocky and we can't really do it. So we walk a lot of it. We come to aid station 26, fuel up. Half a mile later, we round the spin. Dude, there's 100-person bottleneck line of people all in line to climb down this 50-foot ladder down into a canyon. And we sit there for 45 minutes. So you run 26 miles in the cold and rain and you stop and you shimmy along this line. Dude, so we finally go down this canyon. People are mad. They're like, no one's finishing this 15-hour cutoff. This is terrible. Eric and I are still trying to be positive, but we get down there and dude, waterfalls are starting to form in this canyon because it's it's a flash flood warning. It came out after. But we're climbing these other ladders to get out, and we get out of the canyon and we realize they had rerouted everyone else.
Wow.
They didn't have to do it, and so of course I'm like a little butthurt, and so dude, so we keep running and we go back and we see Hannah at mile 32. Um, and change shirts, change socks. Drew picks us up to film me a little bit. We keep running, and we're walking a ton. It's so sandy and it's so like that was the part that I just wasn't expecting. Um, so we get to there's aid station at 38, mile 37, and dude, there's this hill. There's the photo of me, and I'm like on my hands and like my hands are on my knees, like pushing, and this hill is like it feels like straight up. And Drew, I'll never forget. He was like, "All right, man, like we gotta like kind of hurry up this mountain to make some good time." And I was like, "All right." Bro, my first step, I was like, "I'm not making good time. You can't. It's so steep and there's so much sand." I was like, "I'm not. I can't do this. Like I'm walking this."
Mm.
So I walked up and saw Hannah at the other aid station. I told her, I said, "Hey, like change up my battery on my headlamp," because I knew the last aid station we were going to the night. So Drew, Eric, and I do we go run Page Rim Trail. As soon as we started, it was so muddy and slippery you couldn't run because there's a cliff to your right, and you fall, you're dead. So we had to like walk a lot of that, and which hindered our time a little bit too. So we come to the final aid station, and Eric and I, Drew went with my girlfriend and me, made it to the finish line. Eric and I set off. I got my headlamp, and we go same thing right back into the mud, and we're slipping and sliding. I think I fell like twice. Um, and about half a mile in, my backup headlamp battery dies again, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I called my girlfriend. I said, hey, meet me at this road we're gonna run across. Bring my backup headlamp. So she drives, they meet us there, and Eric and I are arguing about like how to get back. It's very dark, and you can't. You're looking for the pink ribbons, and it's a whole mess. And so we're arguing about how to get back on the trail, and we realized that both routes would have put us like, back on the trail. And so we started going. Dude, a quarter of a mile later, Eric's headlamp dies, and I'm like, "You got to be kidding me!" Because my headlamp was really, really dim. And so I was like, all right, I'll run behind you. Like, let's do this. So Eric pulls out his cell phone light, and we do it for the rest of the race, which was an experience of a lifetime. When we got to mile 47, you're on this ledge and you can see the finish line and you can hear the people and you get this huge burst of like adrenaline. You're like, oh my gosh, like we're right there. You hit mile 48, you're back out in the wilderness. It's pitch black. You can't hear anything. And it's the biggest like mind, I've never had my mind messed with so bad in my life. And I will never forget that moment of excited to just kidding. Um, so yeah, 48 came, we were down the dumps and kept getting lost a lot. And, you know, hit mile 49 and that last half, I just tried to empty my tank and just take off. And yeah, we finished in 15 hours and 19 minutes with the final time. So yeah, that I think kind of answer your question like that. Something that I wasn't expecting. What made it so hard was the conditions. Honestly, like I didn't realize how sandy it was going to be. It wasn't supposed to rain. It wasn't supposed to be that cold. Um, and but there was never a point in my mind where I was like, I'm not going to be able to finish this. I knew I was going to finish it, but it tested me very, very much, very much. So
It sounds like quite an experience. And on the other side of that experience, I'm interested to hear your answer to this next question. And it's a simple one. When you hear the word endurance, what does that mean to you in context of the race and just also in context of life?
well, for life, I think endurance of like I'm gonna put the words together and say endurance of life. Like I think your entire life is like an endurance race, right? And you're gonna run parts of it, you're gonna walk parts of it, right? You're gonna sit down and relax sometimes, and you're gonna sprint the other times. And that's how that race was. We ran, we walked, we sprinted, we sat. Like it's a journey, and I think that's where endurance for me is journey.
I like that. Nobody's ever given that answer. We're 91 episodes in. Nobody's ever given that as the answer. And it's true. I mean, if you look at even just your recent experience with the brain tumor and that ultra marathon, right? There are highs, lows, ups, downs, things you planned for, things you didn't plan for, moments of excitement, anticipation, disappointment, right? You're with other people, you're alone, it's dark, it's light, right? I mean, it's just kind of the same thing, right? In a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
yeah, no, absolutely. What one thing I'd love to share is there's this little quote, and I to this day I don't know where I heard this quote from, but it's something I told myself during surgery. It's something I told myself during this race, and it's as simple as "this too shall pass." And I've said that so many times, especially during the race. And for me, like all it's so great because for me, like in anyone, all you have to do is say it one time when you're in the dump and then say it again. And then when you say it again, think back to the first time, right? Like this too shall pass. Like the pain, the anxiety, the depression, the frustration, the whatever you're going through, think back to the last time you're going through that. And look, like you got through it. This too shall pass. And I don't know, like I don't know where my dad may have said, I don't know where I heard that, but it always stuck with me, and I just think it's so powerful because us as humans don't ever give ourselves credit for the work we've already done. We never give ourselves credit for the work we've already done, and I think when you sit down and you take a second and you think back to the things you have accomplished, be proud of yourself. It's not all about like what someone else has and like what's coming in the future, but like be proud of what the work you've done and be excited about the work you get to do.
I'm gonna share this. This blew my mind when I found this out the first time. I think you'll appreciate this. Did you know that's not the whole phrase? Did you know there's more to it?
No, yeah, if you, I don't even know who said that. So if you can share with me, I'd love to give him credit because I have no idea where I heard that from.
All right. So I also don't know who said it. However, I believe the whole phrase is "this shall pass and this too shall pass," meaning the good times will pass and the bad times will pass. It all passes. And what you said holds
Hmm.
so true. And I think the piece that is also important to recognize is that when we're riding the highs, when life is good, we really need to soak that in because that doesn't last forever either, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we'll get to the bottom of it though. I don't know who said that, but if
We got to
any,
figure who wrote that, man.
now I think you almost answered this last and final question, but I'm going to throw it your way and then we'll see what you come up with. You know, people listening to this podcast are all over the place, different seasons of life, going through different things, but everybody's struggling with something, as you and I both know. If you get a chance to speak to somebody right now who's just in a dark season, maybe in shock, not sure where to go, what to do, or you know why they're even here right now. What would you say to that person on the other end of this podcast?
Well, there's a couple of things. And I think I kind of started out this call or this podcast by just talking about like community. Um, I think there's oftentimes people maybe get intimidated by trying to find new groups or trying to get involved. But at the end of the day, like everyone who's maybe in that group, like they're probably feeling the exact same way. Um, find people who are there to support you. If that person isn't there and if that person is not gonna encourage you through your lows, like they're not really there for you. So that's one I'd say is invest in a community. It doesn't have, I'm not saying like it has to be the BP in the community, the project and door. Like go find a gym, go find a book club, go find something that you enjoy and you'll find like-minded people. And those are that is your community. Um and then yeah, the second and final thing, I, I'm gonna go right back to it, but like the pain that the hurt of your experience is like that will pass and look back to the times where you've struggled, the times you've gone through hardship, and use that as your motivation, knowing that the experience that you're going through right now, it will pass.
I appreciate you sharing that, Gabe, and I really just appreciate you showing up and sharing your story. I'm curious if you have anything next on the calendar when it comes to racing that we can follow along with. Do you?
Yeah, man, not at the moment. I'm still kind of like just kind of enjoying like not having the pressure to go like run or stuff like that. I'm definitely interested in potentially another 50. I'd be curious to like just to run a little bit faster and maybe not have so many like nature nature affecting the race. So potentially another 50 or another marathon or something like that. I'm kind of just excited to just get back in the gym and lift weights and not really have a schedule. So nothing as of now, but uh high possibility I could something come up soon. So
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with just enjoying fitness and being present and building that community, like you mentioned. If people want to connect with you, if people want to follow along with what you have going on, or they just want to reach out and say thank you, where's the best place for people to do that?
yeah, the best for me is Instagram. The Gabe Fuentes is probably the best way to reach out to me. Shoot me a DM, say what up. I'd love to connect with people. So
Awesome. Well, Gabe, thank you so much again for this. I appreciate you immensely. And I'm looking forward to the next time that you and I get to connect down in Texas, or hey, if you're ever up in Philadelphia, you've got a place to stay.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.